We have a new secretary. Congratulations for a new vice president and our new board secretary.
Should I move?
Yes, you should move, and then board member Veta can move down so that we don't have, it's really nice to not have empty chairs in between.
To access the
Thank
YouTube
you.
channel to start the stream. Do all that. And then this.
All right, we will move on to Roman numeral 4, after our board members get settled, which is often the meatiest part of our agenda, though it never looks that way as published, but superintendent announcements and follow-up. And of course, we are in the countdown to back to school, so I'm guessing there's a few things to say. But please, go ahead, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble. Again, congratulations to your new positions, and then again, welcome. We're glad to have you. Superintendent's announcements, return to school. We're ready to welcome grades 1 through 12 students back on Wednesday, August 17th, and pre-K and kindergarten students on Monday, August 22nd. So just remember, there's 2 different start dates. Final announcements will go out on Friday's bulletin, including how to contact schools for site information, how to reach out to Santa Fe Public Schools regarding registration, technology, transportation, school safety, student nutrition, and other needs. And our welcome back video is in the final stages of production. Thank you, Cody Donarski. And we will be taking daily membership to really figure out what our enrollment is after the first 10 days, how we need to level classes, and maybe even make some shifts in staffing. So that takes place during the first 10 days of school. We are working on a MOU with our union on providing a sign-on bonus stipend for EBAs, who are educational behavioral health assistants or special ed EAs. So we're working on that. That's a big need and a big void we need to fill. Again, transportation routes can be found on our website. Student nutrition information can be found there, so please visit our website and your school's website for many points of interest. Touching the subject of safety, as you may have seen in the newspaper, tactical training with the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office was held last week at 3 Santa Fe Public Schools, Capitol High, Santa Fe High, and Nino Otero. We have emphasized in our staff trainings that safety is a shared responsibility. Incident command systems management training is being offered live and virtually for each school's emergency team. Each school does have an emergency team on how to handle emergencies. School safety staff have also conducted walkthroughs with new principals on security procedures and concerns. We're also currently exploring various options to reinforce the windows and seating areas where our secretaries are located. As you know, they are the first individuals that encounter a visitor on our campus. So we are starting to explore various options. And bell schedules are aligned to meet state-required instructional minutes or hours, either way, for both elementary and secondary schools. All elementary schools begin at the same time. All middle schools begin at the same time as well, and so do the high schools. Secondary and elementary schools differ in start times for a couple of reasons. Due to transportation routes, schedules, and also based on the state-required instructional minutes. Students in K through 6 are required to have 990 hours of instructional time per year, while students in grades 7 through 12 are required to have 1,080 instructional time. So it's a difference of 90 instructional hours. We provide an early release date for all schools this year to allow more opportunities for teacher collaboration and planning. Due to transportation and the differences in instructional time requirements, the early release days have to be different for elementary and secondary schools. Our new collective bargaining agreement that we worked very hard with our union president, Grace Mayer, and NEA Santa Fe, states that the teacher workday at elementary schools does not start till 8 a.m. We are encouraging families to utilize transportation, and it really does help us as well with our rider membership, which really drives funding for transportation. Depending on personnel, schools may be able to provide an earlier drop-off time at 7:45, and this will be on a school-by-school basis depending on staff availability and also transportation. Been also meeting with the city to ask for volunteers to help with morning duty. We've worked with some of our sites already to provide a stipend for morning duty. So if you need to drop off your son or daughter or your student a little bit early, then we're going to be able to hopefully make that accommodation to provide supervision. Attendance is a big key and focus area for us this year. District-wide engagement efforts, including attendance success plans and our new campaign, Be Visible. Welcome back efforts, and the attendance coaches team are going out to really do some of the following. Outreach to parents and students. We want to build relationships with the families and the school communities, and also building off what we've done this summer with our summer programming and how we can leverage those community partnerships. It is required by state statute that teachers, substitutes, and all educational individuals take attendance each and every day and each and every period. So that is a state statute. Some of you that may have been driving around schools have already seen 24-foot welcome back banners. Very large, very bright. They include languages of some of our students that do not speak English. So we are recognizing other languages that are within Santa Fe Public School. A new initiative that we're working on to finalizing plan, welcome back movie nights. We're planning on 2 movie nights to invite communities out to our fields to participate in a movie night. We've talked to the city. They want to donate popcorn and other goodies that will really lighten the mood and have an enjoyable evening for our school communities. Technology, Dr. Neil Weaver, more than 2,700 parents and students have gone through the technology drive-through to pick up or exchange their devices. So they've done a marvelous job, almost 3,000. They've also installed smart boards, almost 500 smart boards in 16 different schools. As we announced on July 13th, Santa Fe Public Schools was selected by the New Mexico Volkswagen Settlement Steering Committee, and we will be receiving $1.1 million to electrify our fleet. We will be purchasing 3 new electric school buses to replace some of the older school buses. We had a wonderful retreat Thursday and Friday with district leadership, secretaries, and principals. As you recall, last year we combined them all into one because we wanted everyone to feel that they were valued. And so secretaries, principals, district staff participated in a 2-day event talking about new initiatives, board policies, expectations, and we felt the energy in that event, and it was wonderful. And as reported in the New Mexican this morning, front page, we had a ribbon cutting celebration for our Early Childhood Center at Ramirez Thomas Elementary. Thank you for everyone who attended, everyone who sent great notes, and congratulations. The facility is amazing. Participating parents who are staff, that's the key, it is staff, are thrilled. Again, I want to thank Dr. Patricia Asuara, who really led this. I get a lot of the credit, but all I did was say yes or no. She drove it. So, I want to give her the credit. Mr. Peter McWayne, Deputy Superintendents Vanessa Romero and Christy Wagner, Marissa Bonifer, and the entire facilities team. And also, this was a initiative of NEA Santa Fe and President Grace Mayer for 6 years. And this was one of the reasons why she brought it onto the radar when we were moving into this new team. And with her collaboration and effort, we got this available for our employees. So I want to thank her for all the partnerships and support that she provides us. Level Up Internship Celebration is on August 15th, Monday at La Fonda Plaza. It is called the Level Up Celebration, and it will mark the official end to the summer internship and learning experience. The interns worked with La Fonda, Rosewood Inn of the Anasazi, Four Seasons, and Hotel Santa Fe throughout the summer. We will also hear directly from some of the interns, and we'll have some very special guests there. Attending will be President Noble, who will also be speaking, Tourism Secretary Jen Schroer, Secretary of Workforce Development Ricky Cerna, Santa Fe Mayor Ellen Weber, Santa Fe Tourism Director Randy Randall, Llano Foundation Executive Director Jenny Parks, and hospitality leaders from around Santa Fe's major hotels. So it's going to be a great celebration next week. And I know you guys have been waiting for this one. I just got the information. Summer programming and more to come of it, but some rough numbers. As you remember, we partnered with our community on summer programming, kind of flipping the script on extended learning and really having the community partner with us. We served over 2,600 students. 2,600 students participated in summer programming, which comes out to a little more than 20% of our entire enrollment. So it was a great opportunity. Nobody was required to attend. These 2,600 students did it on their own. We were offering 33 programs at 13 different sites. I won't go down all of them, but I'll share this with the board, all the sites and the programs, and also the number of students that participated. So want to thank our community partners, you, the board, for really helping us move this forward with the partnership of our community. And tomorrow I'll be speaking with at the Santa Fe Chamber of Commerce Business Over Breakfast, and want to thank Bridget Dixon, the Santa Fe Chamber of Commerce. They will be paying for background checks for Santa Fe Public School volunteers. So I'll be out there asking for additional volunteers, but want to thank Bridget Dixon and the Santa Fe Chamber for covering the cost of background checks. Just a quick last update on standards-based learning. The team, our district team and our partners have unpacked 1,600 state standards. 13 schools are going to fully implement standards-based instruction, and it's important to remember that this was an effort that we partnered with our schools on. Teachers, district staff, principals, anybody who wanted to get involved, they were our partners in this. We also have an internal website that we unveiled last week at our PD that allows the teachers to look at the standards, how they were impacted, how they can provide instruction, how they can provide feedback, and also the grading of it. So that is an internal website that is available to all of our staff district-wide. So we're really doing a lot of the legwork for them so they don't have to ask or be asked to do this stuff on their own. So that does conclude my superintendent's update for President Noel.
Thank you very much. Lots in there. Any questions from the board on the superintendent's updates? Go ahead, Dr. Gonzalez.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say that I went to the ribbon cutting for the Early Childhood Center and I was totally amazed. It's such a beautiful place. I wanted to be a 2-year-old again.
I will also say I was at a Chamber of Commerce event today where Bridget Dixon was billing you speaking tomorrow. And just to say that the Chamber is committed to raising as much money as needed to pay for these background checks. So it would be great to challenge them to raise more than the $2,000 they have in hand, and to blow through that and need, 2,000 more and 2,000 beyond that and whatever it is. So. And it's a good reminder that Superintendent mentioned this, but we did have a commitment from Mayor Alan Weber and the city to allow some leave for city employees to come and volunteer in our schools. And the Chamber stepped up and challenged the business community to match the city's commitments in volunteer hours. And we would love to see this become a competition to really fill all of this need and tie our community more closely together with more volunteers in our schools. So please, to our community, our business community, our partners at the city, we hope to get this volunteer effort really more energy for it this school year. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, President Noble, for that. And it really would help us with that early drop-off. So those volunteers that we can get out there, morning duty would really benefit Santa Fe Public Schools. So I guess that challenge is out there for volunteers to come and help us with morning duty.
Go ahead, or Secretary Anderson.
It's going to take us a minute. Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you for the reminder about picking up devices, because neither Vice President Jose nor I have picked up devices for our children. So that is very helpful. But I also just wanted to say there are check marks next to lots of things on my list, just to give you props for electrifying the fleet, the childcare, the level of internship, which I read a great article about, the summer programming, standards-based learning, welcome back movie nights. These are all like just incredible initiatives by the district, and I'm so proud to be a part of a district that does so many good things. So thank you for that. And then I just had a question about attendance, because I know that's a big focus. And I also, listening from home in our last board meeting, listening to the members who applied, and also listening to the Earth Care Summit or forum that they had for them, talking about attendance and some of the ideas that they had about really increasing that and not involving law enforcement and CYFD unless absolutely necessary, which I'm hoping that really is never necessary. So I wanted to know if that had been a part of the conversation. And then there was also a suggestion last week, which has just been something playing around in my head since I've had kids in the district, which is this idea of home visiting or visiting with students at a neutral location. And I didn't know, they do that for pre-K, but I didn't know if that was ever a part of, of course there are agreements with the teachers union and things like that, but is that ever a part of the equation?
Yeah, good question, Board Secretary Anderson. We did start home visits during the pandemic. We did provide stipends for staff that were going out there to really knock on the doors and see if those children were okay. So we've continued that. It's not as large of an effort because students are now back in school. During the remote learning, everybody was at home. When they were not logging on and we couldn't make contact, then we were knocking on those doors. So we'll continue those efforts and continue to push towards having better attendance, right? It's just not a problem in Santa Fe, it's a problem nationwide and also within the state of New Mexico. And then your first question, I answered them backwards. We'll continue to partner with communities, and if, when we had that forum or the special board meeting for the new appointee or the new board member, it was an appointee, I did meet with those candidates and asked them, if you have ideas, please reach out to us. We're willing to listen and partner. Even with childcare, it wasn't my idea, it was somebody else's. And so we're here to listen, we're here to partner, and we're here to do what's best for students and staff.
Great, thank you so much.
I guess I have one question, one comment. There was some information shared at the school orientation that I went to that it is helpful for all students to fill out the free and reduced lunch paperwork, even if there's a decent amount of confidence that you won't qualify. Can you just speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, thank you, Board President Noble. It really does drive who qualifies for free lunch or reduced lunch. So the individuals, when they're filling out those applications, help us or help determine, it's not us, it's actually a formula that helps determine who receives or what schools receive free and reduced lunches. So even if you're unsure, fill it out. It helps us. It helps the district. Again, if you're unsure, I would suggest that you fill it out, and then we'll make that determination through the formula.
And even the participation numbers in surveys seem to matter and show engagement
Absolutely.
Around this topic.
It does.
And Board President Noble,
Yeah.
is that on the registration site? Where do people fill out that form?
I think we have it on the student nutrition website,
Okay.
don't we?
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And another comment, but it would be great if we could just offer free meals and not worry about all of this income qualification. Really, student meals should be universal access.
And that's something that the Deputy Superintendent and I have been talking about. We have noticed that some school districts are offering it, so we're exploring how they're doing it. And so that's something that's on our radar.
Great to know, thank you. And you talked about the bell schedule. I don't know if you mentioned, this is part of what has been worked out with our union in the collective bargaining process, correct?
You are correct. Whenever we start talking about the workday, it is negotiations with our union and what the contract looks like. So it is worked out through negotiations between the district, my staff, and also NEA Santa Fe President Grace Mayer, and how it works out into the teacher's contract. So it is negotiated through the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, which, goes back and forth, and we don't always agree. But it was what we thought was in the best interest of our staff, but also meeting and exceeding the instructional minutes still with this different start time.
Thank you very much. And I think a number of us have had communications about the varying bell schedules. I appreciate your explanation about that. I suspect that many families are still not aware of some of the changes, so it would be great to do some proactive communication, and as you alluded to or at least touched upon, some proactive problem solving with folks around the times when they start work and all of those things. It is a change, and that is often hard, and as much as we can do to support our working families as we adjust to a new bell schedule would be good. Also, just congratulations on the Child Care Center, on the 2,600 students who participated in the summer program. That is worth underlining, and I'm sure there was lots of good information about what was done there and where the kids were. But speaking of working families, that's a lot of children, and probably, I'm certain, a lot of working families who would have had much bigger expenses or perhaps even learning loss and any number of other things if those programs had not been provided. So, 2,600 students who had summer activities who might not have, if not for the work of you and the team in the Santa Fe Public Schools, is really something to be proud of.
Yeah, I just want to add at no cost to those who wanted to participate.
Yeah.
Board President Noble.
Yes, Board Member, or Secretary Anderson.
It's fine.
Get there.
The nutrition brings up another question for me along with the bell schedule. I know you said it would vary site by site, but do all students have an opportunity to eat breakfast at the sites?
Secretary Anderson, so that one got me too. They do. We actually only had one school at that time that was not serving breakfast, but I did work with Dr. Gonzalez. It was one of her sites, and we did get breakfast to be served to the students there.
So there is time in the service.
It's always built in.
Okay, great. Madam President.
Go ahead, Vice President Bose.
Thank you. So to follow up on that question, I have had some folks reach out to me concerned about the bus routes that are delivering their students at 8:15 when school starts at 8:15. So I'm hearing that we want students to be riding the bus, but how do they eat breakfast when they're not arriving until school starts?
Vice President Bose, I got that one right. What we do is at times they do eat in the classroom, so we're not going to close off the ability to get a meal just because they arrive on time or a little late. So that option will be available. I've actually visited some elementary schools when they've picked up their breakfast, go back to the classroom, start instruction, and they eat at the same time. So it's still kind of worked into it. It's a mutual understanding between staff, teachers, and also student nutrition.
Okay. And then one other suggestion as far as communication about those schedule changes. I know that we've talked in the past about how oftentimes parents and families pay more attention to communication that's coming directly from the school site versus district-wide. So maybe in this last couple of days of summer, we could have those messages pushed out from the school sites to families. Hey, there's changes. Keep an eye out. Please pay attention.
Absolutely, and I did
And
ask.
communicate with us if
Yep.
you have issues and hardships.
Perfect. And I did ask Mr. Donarski to verify that all schools were doing that, because I did remember that suggestion in the past. If it comes out from a site, parents are more likely to listen to that message. So we'll continue to verify it and ensure that it goes out.
Anything else on all these topics? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to public forum. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble. Mr. Donarski, our Public Information Officer, will be our official for public forum.
Good evening, Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. There are 2 people signed up for public forum comment tonight, and I believe the 2 people are here in person. Rules for public forum. Public forum includes online and/or virtual participation as needed. as well as in-person comments when the board holds in-person meetings. Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. There will be no sharing of time. Please self-monitor and observe your 3-minute time limit. I will give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue are allowed only during public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it is on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. Please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. Please do not discuss employee matters which may result in disciplinary action. Instead, notify the employee's supervisor, the Human Resources Department, or the superintendent. Our first public forum speaker tonight is Gail Hansen. And as Ms. Hansen makes her way up to the dais, I would just like to say today was my daughter's first day at the Early Childhood Center. And as soon as she walked up, she said, "Dada, down," and she sat down and ran away and didn't even say bye to me. So that's how excited she was to start. So just wanted to make sure everyone knew that. Ms. Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Donarski. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Superintendent Chavez and board members. My name is Gail Hansen. I'm currently employed with Santa Fe Public Schools as an EDHA, Educational Behavior Health Associate. Over the past 9 years working in that capacity in a SPED classroom with special needs students, I have a few items to address to help our students, families, faculty, and community. Number one, about 2 years ago, I heard from teachers and admin staff that one-on-ones, which is one EA dedicated to one high-needs special student, were no longer going to be allowed by the district. Apparently, the task of constant supervision has replaced the one-on-ones. This was explained to me that an EDHA would now perform constant supervision, which means that an EDHA is to keep your eyes on a high-needs special student and to assist all other high-needs students and other SPED students within that classroom. This is like asking someone to drive and text at the same time. My question, why has the district decided to eliminate the one-on-ones? Because we all know the consequences of texting and driving. Number two, I just heard today that the technology department is no longer going to allow the EA's Chromebooks. A, how much more do you want to make us feel inadequate? B, how are we supposed to help our students with their online classwork? Or are we just glorified babysitters? C, how are we supposed to keep up to date on school emails sent throughout the day? D, if we do go remote, we have no Chromebook to log in. Is that a free day for us? Is the parent that the school district has no idea the vast responsibilities of an EDHA? I challenge any of you to join us for a week in performing our responsibilities. Number three, this leads me to the recent memo that was sent out about pay increases. While I'm glad to see those increases, it is obvious to me that I could make more money being a bus driver, a safety aide, or even a cafeteria worker. As an EDHA, I feel we are the pillars for the classroom with an undesignated amount of responsibilities, working within and outside our realm. 7 hours a day, we are in constantly contact with the SPED students along with general ed students. The pay increase does not compete with driving a bus for SFPS or Uber, being a safety aide with SFPS or the City Police Department, preparing or serving food at SFPS or at a restaurant. There is a tier pay structure for teachers and cafeteria staff. Why is there not the same for EDHAs? And why has the district chosen to undervalue and underpay the EDHAs? And lastly, I've recently seen a memo with a disclaimer at the bottom that violates the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title 7. While reading through the disclaimer at the bottom, the word religion was left out. If this is an oversight, we can see the competence of those preparing district communications. And if this was not an oversight, then it appears to be a biased predisposition against those with any religious beliefs. I bring these issues up to you to hopefully improve our education and the value of each student, parent or guardian, and staff members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hansen. Appreciate you being
The last public forum speaker tonight is Kobe Hansen. Mr. Hansen.
Yes, we are ready. Superintendent Chavez, members of the board, my name is Toby Hansen. My wife is an educational behavioral health assistant, that's a mouthful, with SFPS. All bias aside, my wife is exceptional in her job. Since 2013, she has worked in SPED classrooms in middle and high schools in the district. From the beginning, she has taken on the challenge of teaching these SPED middle and high school students phonics and reading with great success. The appalling fact that these students are not learning to read until high school is a subject I'll save for another night. EBHAs and EAs rarely have time to take the 10-minute breaks they are allowed, much less an uninterrupted lunch. Understaffed classrooms, helping students with lunches, and students that don't or can't leave the classroom are some of the reasons that EAs don't get a well-deserved break. Added to that, when a SPED teacher has a prep period or an IEP meeting, who's left watching the classroom? The EAs and EBHAs. Now to put a bow on this. We were going over the Cba Summary for the 22-23 year, and while I personally was glad to see a pay increase was made across the board, it's disheartening to see that not all of the non-teacher positions listed, EBHAs and EAs for the lowest paid positions mentioned. It's interesting that the group that has the most influence and time spent in the education of the students of these non-teacher groups didn't warrant, in the words of Superintendent Chavez, the deep appreciation for their outstanding service. I guess it's easy to see why it's such a struggle to hire and retain people in these positions when they're overworked, underpaid, and feel underappreciated. One final thought in closing, not being one to live in fear, I feel that it's time as a nation, a state, and a school district, we need to come to grips with the fact that COVID, like other flu strains, is going to be with us forever. It's a virus and we will never completely be rid of it. I'm not saying that it's not a real illness, or that we should not protect those who are vulnerable, but we need to return to normal pretty soon. The idea that staff does not have a booster, needs to go through surveillance testing on their own time and own expense is in my mind ridiculous. If an employer is going to require a medical procedure of its employees, that employer should foot the bill for those requirements. That being said, vaccinations and boosters should be a personal choice, just like the masks are here tonight, and not mandated on anyone. For that matter, we can simply look at the news from the past few weeks and to see that having both shots and being double boosted is not going to keep someone from contracting COVID twice in a month. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen.
Is there anyone who missed the opportunity to sign up to speak at public forum who would still like to address the board tonight? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Janarski.
Thank you, Board President.
Moving on to Roman numeral 6, our union update. We've heard a few mentions of our NEA President Grace Mayer. I won't sing, but it is her birthday today, and she texted, as well as the first day of work for teachers. So happy birthday to Ms. Mayer. Congratulations to all our teachers who went back, and off we go towards the school year. But just really want to wish Ms. Mayer a happy birthday and acknowledge the hard work she's done. You say about 6 years on advocating for the Child Care Center. I think that's about right. It was one of the first things I heard from her when I got on the board. And I've been here about, I don't know, it's 5.5, I don't know how long I've been here. I've been here a long time. But, you know, that's a nice little birthday present for that to finally happen. And we appreciate the district staff and the hard work that goes into that. It also, of course, goes in on the NEA side and Ms. Mayer and the team that negotiates the contracts for our workforce. So again, happy birthday to Grace Mayer. Moving on, there's nobody else here from the union to do a union update, is there? Okay. Moving on to Roman numeral 7, our presentations. We will start with presentation A, our college, career, technical education, and work-based learning presentation.
Thank you, Board President Noble, members of the board. With us tonight, leading us through the presentation is Deputy Superintendent Vanessa Romero.
Thank you, President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. Back in the fall, we had a study session and conversations around how do we support our students and engage them in internships, and how do we provide more opportunities for post-secondary experiences. And with that, we came up with our resolution, board resolution, for college, career, and technical education, and that was, I think, signed in January. And so tonight is just to let everyone know where we are in this progress, in this journey, and where we are in supporting our students with internships, work-based learning, a study that we conducted with the help of Gary Hochlander with Connect Ed. And I want to thank Dr. Gonzalez, who's been a huge advocate and a supporter of this work. I also want to thank the people that will be presenting, Michael Hagley, Assistant Superintendent, Mary Maxey, Jose Villarreal, who's been super supportive of this work. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Michael Hagley.
Good evening, Board President Noble, members of the board, and Superintendent Chavez. It has been exciting work in the past several months, working with Gary Hochlander and his team to study our district and our current implementation of career technical education, as well as the opportunities that are before us to expand career technical education so that all of our students have greater access to CTE. One thing you'll notice throughout the presentation, and beginning with our board resolution that was brought forth by Dr. Gonzalez, is that we refer to career technical education as college career and technical education. And this is really an effort to communicate the changing role of CTE and best practice in high school education, high school and post-secondary in our country. It's a step away from students are either college-bound or career-bound, and recognizing that all students are eventually career-bound, and some students, and maybe many students, will attend college as well. But that our high school experience, and actually K-12, is to help prepare students for their post-secondary endeavors, which may include college and will certainly include experience in a career field. And so you'll see in this definition on this first slide, what is college, career, and technical education? And it's really why are we putting such an emphasis on this? And you'll see the bridge and blurring the lines between college and career, the blurring of the lines and the bridge between core academic proficiencies and industry standards. We're really making an effort not to deliver the math curriculum in isolation and deliver the English language arts curriculum in isolation. We want to bring in real-world relevance to students, and the goal is to provide a greater engagement for students, which, as Superintendent Chavez mentioned earlier, that is an ongoing emphasis, and in particular this year. So this is one effort that's going to help improve engagement and relevance for students in our district. The next slide is just a recap of the guiding principles, thank you, that we adopted in the fall to guide our work to expand college and career technical education in our district. One, we have a long history of CTE in our district. So we're not starting a CTE program, we're building on a well-established program that in some cases goes back 30 plus years at the old Votech campus at Santa Fe High School with welding programs and carpentry and so on, all the way up to some of our newest pathways in the design arts and some pathways that have been brought on board more recently. So our efforts are to continue to build on our career pathways that make secondary education more engaging and relevant. The second, as I alluded to before, is to inject the core academics into career preparation and career preparation into core academics. And this is again with the end in mind of increasing engagement for students. You'll see project-based learning is mentioned there. One thing that we have found in researching how do you effectively create opportunities for project-based learning in a district, it's a hard thing to do. And the one reason many districts are unable to effectively develop a project-based learning model is because there's not a groundwork that's laid with the teaching staff in terms of understanding how standards and curriculum develop. And so the work we're doing with standards-based learning is really foundational to being able to eventually have a robust project-based learning model in our district. The third bullet there is bringing the classroom into the community. And this is one of kind of a more recent development in the research and development and the research and practice around career technical education. Work-based learning opportunities with job shadowing, internships, mentorships. This is something that we have really launched this year and have launched in a very big way, and we're excited to share with you some details and results already that we have seen from this effort. And then lastly is to continue to expand our dual credit opportunities aligned to pathways. We have partnerships, of course, with Santa Fe Community College, IAIA, other post-secondary partners, and we want to be able to build experiences for students that start in high school and continue in the same pathway of their interest into college. Many of them will be taking college courses while they're in high school, and those are dual credit courses, but we want to work with our post-secondary partners to build a pipeline through the pathways so that students can continue to take upper level classes working towards certifications and degrees at the local post-secondary institutions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Gary Hoaklander from ConnectEd, and we had asked him to help us develop a survey and a number of instruments, including surveys and community forums, parent forums, employee forums, to gather some information to help inform our work moving forward.
Welcome, Mr. Hoaklander. It's great to see you in person. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. It's good to see you again. Very briefly, I am Gary Hoaklander. I'm president of ConnectEd, the National Center for College and Career. We are a national nonprofit that works with communities all over the country, including several others here in New Mexico, to help build systems of college and career pathways that prepare all students, especially those furthest from opportunity, for lasting success in post-secondary education, in career, and in civic life. So I was absolutely delighted to be invited by Santa Fe Public Schools to undertake what has turned into now, I guess, about a 6 to 9 month study looking at career and technical education here in Santa Fe Public Schools with a particular lens of expanding it in a way, as Michael indicated, that increases the integration of career and technical education with core academics. This is an opportunity to really change the way students experience high school, not just in career and technical education, but in core academics as well. Introducing much more real-world application, project-based learning, performance assessment into academic classes, while simultaneously introducing much more academic content into career and technical education. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we went about this, and I want to begin by first acknowledging this was a team effort. From beginning, and not just in the writing of the report, which was certainly a team effort, but in actually taking on the introduction of Zello, which is the platform that we use to assess student aptitude, student learning styles, student personalities, and using that platform to match that assessment to career clusters. And my colleague Mary Massey will be having a lot more to say about that in a minute. So again, I just want to extend my thanks to Michael, to Vanessa, to Jose, to Carl, and particularly Mary, who is really my colleague throughout all of this. Thank you very much. That said, any errors or omissions in the report are my responsibility. So you absolutely should hold me accountable for that. So basically, as you can see, we undertook really 3 activities here. We did assessments of middle and high school students using the Zello platform to assess their aptitudes, their personalities, their learning styles, and Zello sort of deductively matches those to the kinds of career clusters and career occupations that are the best fit for students. And again, Mary will be summarizing those findings in just a second. We did surveys of middle and high school students, trying to learn more about how they're experiencing middle school and high school, and particularly what do they know about career technical education, and what is their interest in engaging in career and technical education going forward. We asked similar questions of both middle school and high school teachers, and the results of those surveys are all included in our final report to you. Finally, again, with wonderful support from Mary, Carl, others, we conducted focus groups with teachers, with parents, and with community stakeholders, including employers and representatives of post-secondary institutions. And we took that information and we assembled it into a final report, which we have presented to the district, again, with lots of input from them in the content of that, and I think that will be available to you whenever you would like to have it. So let me just summarize a few quick highlights. I guess the first thing I want to say, there's a strong appetite among students for career and technical education. We found that more than 50% of middle and high school students said they were very interested or interested in taking career and technical education. Only 11% said they were not at all interested. Students are hungry for this. By the same token, part of their hunger is they're hungry for more relevance, not just in career and technical education, but in their core academics. When we ask them, well, how well are the courses that you're taking in high school, how well do they match your interests and plans for college and career after high school? More than 60% responded somewhat or not at all. In a similar vein, when we asked them how prepared they felt they were to make decisions regarding their futures after high school, 60% responded somewhat or not at all. There is a strong hunger for a better high school experience among many, many young people in Santa Fe public high schools. It was also clear to us, if we can go to the next slide, please. Oh, yes, thank you. We would strongly encourage you to better communicate your current system and particularly your hoped-for aspirational system for career and technical education to teachers not only at the middle school but also at the high school. From the teacher surveys, it was very clear that many teachers at both middle school and high school are not very familiar with the kinds of career and technical education opportunities that are available to young people. And that also means that they're not really very familiar about how they can collaborate with career and technical education to provide a more integrated experience. So how do students' aptitudes, learning styles, and personality types match to the kinds of career clusters that Santa Fe Public Schools could consider around an effort to expand these kinds of opportunities for young people? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary Massey. Mary.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Chavez. As you can see from our slide here, matching student assessments to career clusters, by a nearly 2-to-1 margin, the arts, audio, video, technology, and communications pathway was identified as the top career cluster. This cluster includes designing, producing, writing, publishing multimedia content, as well as visual and performing arts, design, journalism, and entertainment services. As you can see there, human services was the second top career cluster identified, and followed very closely with architecture, construction, and then agriculture, food and natural resources, and then health sciences. But if you look more broadly at the human services and you start to include education and child development, there really is, it really could help address the district's objective to grow our own educators. And in fact, interestingly, 27% of the high school students we surveyed said that they would be interested in pursuing a career in pursuing a teaching career. The report also notes that the top 2 career clusters are largely missing from the offerings that we currently have for career technical education. So both offer important opportunities to really respond to student needs and also leverage our rich resources in our community for the arts and for our creative economy. Next slide. So this table offers an illustration of what the next evolution of career clusters just might look like based on ConnectEd's data analysis. Because of the high student interest, this possible configuration could include the arts, AV, technology, and communications at both Capital High and Santa Fe High. Capital could consider adding the human services pathway to already well-established pathways in health sciences and business. In this example, also the culinary arts at Santa Fe High might be expanded to include more hospitality and tourism, and possibly creating an agricultural pathway joining the already established engineering pathway or the STEM pathway at Santa Fe High. At ECO, the overarching pathway theme could be the skilled trades and technical sciences, and 2 of 3 strands might be offered, including like construction technology, auto technology, or advanced manufacturing. Currently, some of the existing pathways are very narrowly focused on specific occupations, and such as auto body or greenhouse or road. So much work lies ahead. First, on the school and the district levels, and considering a wide variety of factors that we'll need to consider to determine exactly the career clusters that we will offer our students to ensure they graduate college and career ready. And back to you, Eric.
Thank you, Mary. So in the report are 12 different recommendations. Working with the district leadership, we condensed these into 7 that we want to share and emphasize with you this evening. Number 1, we spent in all of the focus groups, we asked everybody, what is it that you want students to know and be able to do when they graduate from high school in Santa Fe? And we got answers that won't surprise you. We want them to be better communicators. We want them to be good problem solvers. We want them to know how to work collaboratively or when to work independently. Many of these things are already identified in your attributes of a graduate. And one of our first recommendations is to encourage you to really elevate and amplify those attributes of a graduate and use it as a kind of North Star for what you want improved and expanded college and career pathways to produce, and really turn that into a graduate profile. So that's number 1. Number 2, as Mary indicated, many of the current offerings are fairly occupationally specific. And we would strongly encourage you, as you think about creating an expanded role for college and career pathways in Santa Fe Public Schools, to adopt the 16 clusters that are part of the New Mexico Public Education Department. They're much more broadly defined, hospitality and tourism, for example, instead of just culinary arts. It doesn't mean you don't offer culinary arts. I want to be really clear about that. It doesn't mean you don't offer welding. But those are offered in a broader context that introduces students to a greater range of what the opportunities and knowledge and skills are needed to participate in that larger industry. So I encourage you to look very carefully at that framework as a way of organizing pathways going forward in Santa Fe. Recommendation 3, as I indicated, using Zello, we did an assessment of students' learning styles. You'll not be surprised, and even in the survey, we asked students, well, what's your favorite way of learning? And as I'm sure you would guess, they said, hands-on. 60% of all students says that is the way we prefer to learn. In the Zello assessment, there obviously are other learning styles. There's auditory, there's visual, there's a big mix of learning styles in the district. And we really want to strongly encourage you to take that data and think carefully about how learning and teaching can be improved to recognize the very different ways in which students learn throughout the district. Recommendation 4, and hats off to Jose, you're going to hear more from him in just a little bit, really encouraging you to build on the great work that's already underway to develop a really strong work-based learning system that is aligned with career pathways, college career pathways for students in Santa Fe Public Schools. You're going to hear some wonderful new activities that Jose has been pursuing. Students are so hungry for this. We found that 83% of high school students said they were very interested in a part-time job or internship, and this is the important part, related to their career interests. 83%. I think only 5% said I'm not interested at all. So Jose's off to a great start. There is a long way to go to build a system that will meet the kind of interests that exist among students throughout the district. Recommendation 5, continue to partner very closely with Santa Fe Community College and other post-secondary institutions to build a stronger system of dual credit. There already are plenty of dual credit opportunities, but they could be more focused, they could be more coherent, and they could be more strongly aligned with a college and career pathway system. So lots to build on there. I mean, not being critical at all, but there's also quite a bit to do. Part of that is recognizing the opportunities to use dual credit to fill gaps in the career and technical education offerings where you don't have staff, and also to develop the kinds of capstone courses that the state holds as a requirement for being considered a career and technical education completer. So it's not a question of new dual credit, but rather improving and focusing what you already have. Recommendation 6, the work initially is primarily focused at the high school level, but for that to be successful requires aligning it with middle school in ways that really encourage more career exploration in middle school, as well as the introduction of project-based learning. We found that 65% of middle school teachers are interested in learning more about project-based learning, and 65% are also interested in having more opportunity to partner with other teachers. Teaching for so long has been a solo profession, but more and more teachers are looking for opportunities to work together, and we would strongly encourage you to pursue that in middle school as well as in high school. And finally, recommendation 7. Doing this well requires planning and it takes time. And so we want to encourage you to devote a year of planning to thinking about how best to pursue the recommendations that we have outlined and some of the other suggestions that are included in our report. That said, there is some urgency because if you want to begin implementation in fall of 23, there's a lot that has to be done by January of this year in order to address things like master scheduling, student recruitment, and other kinds of issues. So a year sounds like a long time, but there's a lot that really has to be done in the next 4 or 5 months. So again, I thank you for inviting me to be with you this evening. It was an honor to be able to do this work and be happy to answer any questions you have tonight or in the future about the report that we submitted. So thank you.
One quick one. Didn't you say 12 recommendations?
Yeah, so in the report there are 12 recommendations. We condensed those into 7 just to keep things simpler for tonight. So there are 12 included in the report. Most of those I think we have covered in the condensation of the 7 that we shared with you. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Hello, greetings. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, thank you for the opportunity to give you a highlight or some highlights on the work-based learning program. My name is Jose Villarreal, and I am the work-based learning coordinator for Santa Fe Public Schools, and I manage our work-based learning program. And Gary had mentioned systems, and it is a systematic process on what we do as far as work-based learning. And it actually, the vision is to scale down to 6th grade and perhaps elementary level in career exploration with our students, capping with that internship in junior, senior level. And in addition to that, we have a semester process. And in that semester process at high school, we provide elective credit, which is called academic career experience, where our students get the opportunity to go out and explore a career, have their interest, and get that hands-on training. And so that model, it looks like ultimately at the beginning of the semester, our students are trained on building a resume and also interview skills. In addition to that, we teach them employability skills on what's expected on the job. And we also weekly check in with them and make sure that they are doing really good on those employability skills, but also get tools and application on getting better in those skills, such as time management, communication, work ethic, professionalism, so on and so forth. That model right there was tested this summer with our hospitality and tourism business partners, which were La Fonda, Rosewood, Four Seasons, and Hotel Santa Fe. It was mentioned earlier by Superintendent Chavez, there's going to be a celebration this next Monday, and we were actually brought in as a partner 6 months into the planning from the employers and Mano Foundation. We were reached out to as a school district, and they heard about our model, and we were able to present it, and we hit the ground running as soon as we came on as a partner in March. And with the help of Mary Massey, the guidance of recruitment, we went in and targeted our business pathway and our culinary arts pathway, and we were able to recruit students and bring in the executives, the GMs, into the schools and pitch the program to them. And it was great because they were able to tell their story, the GMs, of how they advanced in their careers, starting as dishwashers and working their way up to GMs. So we emphasized that it was a career pathway. It wasn't just an entry-level position, and that's what we talk about with all of our industry partners as the internship program. We want this to be a high-quality experience, and we want them to bring on interns, not only giving them that work experience, but also shadowing underneath them for that real-world learning about what it is to do as a manager, what it is to get there as a manager, tell your story about what it is to get a certificate or a degree, what does it take to get there. Anyhow, so we came into the business pathway, to the culinary arts pathway, we pitched the program, we recruited 41 applicants, 22 of them actually interviewed and were placed. I went ahead and was honored with going in and helping them train with those interviews, for those interviews and resume preparation. And there was an event held at La Fonda, and out of those 22 interviews, 22 were placed and 22 finished the program. So 100% success level there. And with that, at that event, it was, again, I talked about the employer-driven component. Our business partners are so invested in this program. They went ahead and invited their head chef and their supervisors in sales and marketing and events planning and so on, finance, and they were stationed in this event, and they were able to give an idea, to a pitch to the interns, what is expected or what is expected on the job, and give them an idea of what they do. They were even practicing making guacamole and were serving meatballs and whatnot. It was really fun for the interns to experience that event. But then thereafter they interviewed and they earned their internship. So that's all a part of our model again. And they weren't just placed again in as a hostess or at front desk. Those listed right underneath the hotels, we placed them in the in the areas of sales and marketing, of their interest, finance, events planning, and weddings. And the pictures on the right, those were actually taken by the Santa Fe New Mexican who went out and visited the hotel sites to learn about the program. So it's been celebrated all summer. Again, just talking and highlighting on the two points on the bottom. Our employability skills Wednesdays, I did not mention that these were paid internships by our hotels. They were also paid to meet with me every Wednesday to talk about, again, time management and dive deep into the work ethic and professionalism, all of these transferable skills that transfer from job to job that are highly needed. So they got trained on those skills, and they were also weekly surveyed. And what an incredible experience for myself, but also for these interns and our employers. I wanted to talk a couple of, or say a couple of highlights or comments from our mentors, some data. We actually surveyed our supervisors and our interns afterwards. And here's what some supervisors had to say about this program. I am thoroughly impressed with the caliber of our interns. They are extremely intelligent, eager to learn, professional, and a pleasure to work with. I can personally tell you that they stand way above other young people within their age group. Thank you for creating such a wonderful program. Another supervisor had mentioned, X-student is motivated, focused, intelligent, and committed. I am trying to introduce Forbes standards gradually. I am also trying to impress upon interns that requests for time off needed to be presented in a timely manner in order to work to employ them successfully and run a smooth operation. So happy to have X-student. We all think he will be our GM one day. Another one had mentioned, this is the best program I have worked with in 37 years I have been in the hospitality industry. Our interns also celebrated with some great comments. This is the best thing I've ever been a part of. Again, you'll hear more if you're going to attend the event on Monday night from our interns. But we're building off the momentum of this program, not only with the partnering with Santa Fe Community College and their newest hospitality badge, they're actually piloting with our interns, which is going to be honored by our hoteliers by potentially raising the pay of interns that have this hospitality badge. We're also building on the momentum to bring on a new cohort in the fall with the same model of internship where they get elective credit, they get paid, and here are some of the government, which is our #1 leading industry in Santa Fe. We have participation from our city of Santa Fe and also state of New Mexico agencies, and also our Santa Fe Public Schools as sort of a school enterprise for those that are interested in the teaching pathway or early childhood pathway. That said, again, going back to the hospitality industry, they're the second leading industry. So we're trying to make sure that we build a workforce pipeline for these industries that are already thriving in Santa Fe. Next slide. And to close out, we also have private sector partners for the fall internship. And those are, to list a few on the left-hand side, which do actually benefit and they are going to be interests from our students based on that survey from Zillow that our colleagues highlighted earlier. And again, we were intentional on targeting these businesses and making sure they were going to produce or provide a high-quality internship. I was remiss to actually mention that not only do we train our students for these internships, we also train our mentors. So we don't want them to bring them on as an entry-level worker, give them grunt work, or just have them do menial tasks that make their job easier. We actually take them through a training, and it's a sequential onboarding. We have them come on and explore the career, explore different departments, and learn the whole scope of operations. And then they get their not menial tasks, but then they get their tasks or hands-on work and get supervised and really bring their talent level and innovative thinking to the business. So it's a win-win for everyone involved in these internships. Lastly, we're going to bring on potentially a 50 intern cohort this fall, and it's from 4 of our high schools. They're up there, and one other highlight is the city of Santa Fe. We have a partnership with them. We have an MOU in waiting that is going to, it's basically ARPA funding, and it's to support youth workforce development. And again, we pitched our model, and they loved it so much. They wanted to fund us $500,000 for 2 years, which is to pay our interns, support us with staff, and also partners in work-based learning. So we potentially will pay interns up to $14 or $15 an hour for the semester, and we'll bring on a new cohort in the spring and continue the process for 2 years. And again, the whole goal of this is to build sustainability, so our partners can potentially end up hiring these interns or giving them potential scholarship opportunities, but we want them as long-term partners, so whether they turn into employee or not, we'll bring on a new cohort every single semester. Thank you very much, and again, if there's any questions about work-based learning, I'd be happy to answer afterwards. And thank you again, Mr. Higby. We'll wrap us up.
Thank you.
All right, so in closing, we just wanted to share some next steps. We want to work with site administrators at our middle schools and high schools to review the report. They haven't had an opportunity to review it, and we feel it's really important for them to understand the report and get their input on how we move forward. It may look like expanding, as what was suggested, of our culinary and including making it more broad as hospitality and tourism. It's going to ask us to, look at current certifications and endorsements of teachers to see if we need to shift and create classes based on their endorsements. Look at current classes, and if it's low enrollment, get rid of those classes so that we can incorporate more pathway-focused offerings. And we want to also start integrating core instruction and collaboration time with our current pathways so that there's more opportunities for planning. So it is going to involve looking at master scheduling, looking at current endorsements and certifications of teachers, and of course working directly with the leadership teams at the school sites to see how we move forward in implementing or expanding on some of these recommendations. And with that, we are open for questions.
Thank you very much. Dr. Gonzalez, you ready to go? I want to thank you, as the others have, for your leadership and work on this. I know you've worked on it a long time before you started working on it for this particular initiative and the resolution that you brought to the board a little while ago. But there's no question you're benefiting from your great wisdom and work in this. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank the whole team. I'm so excited to see this. I think that Santa Fe Public Schools has had, a long history, like Michael said, of career and technical education, but I think expanding the pathways, like Gary talked about, using the state, the PED categories, instead of culinary arts, have it hospitality. I mean, that is what we do in Santa Fe. It's all about hospitality and tourism. So that's a great way to do it. I also think that one of the reasons why I brought this forward in the first place is because I feel like high school has sort of become irrelevant to a lot of students. And by having a career in technical education, it gives a focus and a relevance to the students. It makes them understand why they're learning what they're learning. And I think that's really important for students right now. It's an exciting time, and I look forward to the continued work of this group. And I think you've done an excellent job so far. So thank you. And thank you, Gary.
Anyone else? I have a couple of questions, probably for Mr. Villarreal. I love this. I love all of it, just to say that. And the recommendations seem wonderful. And I guess I would say, can we have the full report?
Yes.
I would imagine that would be all right for the board to see.
We'll get you the full report. We're finishing editing not long ago, so.
Okay, yeah. 41 applicants and 22 internship placements. I guess my question is, what happened to the folks who applied but weren't placed? What's the story there? I mean, it's great that we got so many of both, but
Yeah.
obviously there were 19 who were left out.
Thank you, Madam President. The 41 that applied were given the opportunity to show up to the event, which is another part of the screening process. So they've got to show that motivation and follow through. So the 22 that did show up got hired on.
So everybody who showed up met the various different levels of screening and requirements did get placed.
Absolutely, yes.
Very cool, thank you. I also wonder what was needed with employers. Did you have to work with the businesses to talk to them? Once upon a time when I did this work, there was a lot to be done to bridge the cultural divide sometimes between business owners, professionals, and high school students. Was there any sort of cultural competence building? Here's how to talk to a teenager.
Yes, absolutely. And first off, my background is in entrepreneurship. I'm a former business owner, so I speak their language. But also, as far as bringing on a young person, we have a strategy, we have a formula, and it is, for those that have never done it before, we talk about the feedback you give a young person, and there's studies as far as the 5-to-1 positive feedback that's impactful for any employee. So we talk about that. We also talk about, again, the sequence onboarding of a young person. For some, it's their first job ever. So they got to be sensitive to understanding that, and the guidance is huge. We got to have the support from a supervisor. They have to buy into the program in order to deliver on what we're asking of them. So yeah, I don't want to go into the weeds of that, but it's definitely a great experience. It's a 30-minute training for a supervisor. So I actually do that with all of our cohort of supervisors every semester.
Great. I was going to ask how intensive is it, but a few 30-minute trainings, it sounds like. Thank you. Just a small plug as we think about the Early Childhood Center and that as a potential pathway in the fall of 2022. I'm sure you all know this, but as it is the area in which I work, I have to say it out loud. There's a lot of opportunities in terms of scholarships and incentives being paid for early childhood professionals right now, including a really innovative program being launched by the Santa Fe Community College. With funding from the city of Santa Fe, they're using some of their stimulus funding to support the community college. The program is called Aprende, and it's creating apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships in early childhood, and it provides lots of things. There's also these $2,000 per semester for anyone. That's for like a full load. So if someone were taking a part-time load, and if we could integrate that with community college, it would be very cool. And then on the City of Santa Fe Public Schools partnership, that's very exciting to hear. And out of interest, do you know what area of the city would provide the $500,000 for 2 years of funding for those paid interns?
Yes, it's with Rich Brown and Economic Development.
Excellent. That was my guess. Thank you. Dr. Gonzalez. Oh,
May I add?
Go ahead.
We're in conversations with Julie Sanchez as well. She has some federal stimulus as well that we're trying to access to really expand our internship program.
Go ahead, Dr. Gonzalez.
Excuse me. One of the other reasons why I was really interested in pursuing this is because of the teacher shortage and possibly growing your own, and they've done that in other parts of the state, and I think that's a good move. And I also, if we have high quality career pathways, we might be able to draw some of the students away from the private schools. And I think the work that Jose is doing is great. I've seen this presentation. I mean, I've talked to him about what he's been doing, and it's very exciting, and I just can imagine how it will expand and grow. And I look forward to seeing that.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for your leadership and support.
For President Noble.
Go ahead, Secretary Anderson.
Thank you. I have just a few questions, and I just want to second Dr. Gonzalez. I wouldn't say drawing people from the public schools, but drawing them from wherever they might want to come from. And if that happens to be other schools, then our game. This was a fantastic presentation, and I applaud you so much on the internship program. When I read about it in the New Mexican, I was just thrilled. It's so great to get a positive story from the New Mexican. It means you really, really, really have to be doing something right. So way to go on that. That was great. And I had just a few things popped up in here. One is I love the idea of an agricultural pathway. We have one of the best farmers markets in the country. We have in Santa Fe County in the district, we have lots of folks growing incredible things. We have the program at the community college with aquaponics. I just think that would be an amazing addition. I had a question about the matching student assessments to career clusters. And I was just looking at the data, and of course this is my first time and I'm just doing a cursory glance over it. But one of the things I noticed is that there are big gender differences in career clusters. And that unfortunately a lot of them seem to be sort of these stereotypical gender differences, like in science, technology, engineering, and math, in education and training, human services. So I wondered what was being done to sort of right the ship in that way and make sure that we have lots of young women being matched to technical careers, and that we have them being encouraged to go into education and human services, and how that might work out.
Secretary Anderson, I think that's something that we need to continue to look at and continue providing those surveys and reassessing, and of course going to middle schools and just bringing in teachers from the high school and promoting some of the pathways that we currently have. But I agree, we do need to do work on shifting that stereotypical.
I don't know if that was the right word, but it just popped into my
right. And it is. I think we could do a better job in highlighting and celebrating women in different fields. So that is something that we can work on.
Cool, thank you so much. And Board President Noble, I have just another couple. Is that?
Keep going.
If I keep going. So I don't want to downplay the self-awareness and competence that our students have in themselves and in their careers, but I also know that this might be a difficult time in life for folks to decide which career pathway they want to use. And I love the idea of clusters. And I just wondered how students who may not have an idea of which career pathway, and maybe for a good reason, this might be my personal thing coming into play, because I've bounced around to lots of different kinds of careers, and I wouldn't change that for anything. I'm so happy. It's taken me 20 years to end up where I am, and I love it. But I just wonder kind of, are folks who might be interested in lots of different things that might overlap clusters, how does this take those folks into consideration?
Yeah, no, it's a very important question. Thank you very, very much. I think the first thing to really understand is that the purpose of the cluster theme, whether it's health science, whether it's education, whether it's engineering, whatever, is not to force kids to choose a career. It's to provide coherence, focus for their learning. And in fact, if we do that well, students will be prepared to take on many, many different opportunities after graduating from high school. That's why it's so important to move past welding to architecture, construction, and engineering. Again, not getting rid of welding, I'm not suggesting that, but really broadening students' exposure to both the academic and the technical foundation that they need to move on. One other thing I want to say while we're on that topic, to your question about gender stereotyping, what you call these pathways is very important. And don't take anything too literally that we've already thrown out there. In some of the places that we work, North Kansas City in particular, they have a pathway that they call Design, Innovation, and Technology. It has engineering within it, but it doesn't have engineering in the title. And don't underestimate the importance of those kinds of labels in how you attract students to different kinds of pathways.
That's very cool. Thank you so much. And I have just one more question comment. You said civic life, and as an elected official and the person who watched a lot of school board meetings and city council meetings before I was elected. Tell me how this prepares folks for civic life.
So, a great question, and I'm going to be completely honest. Most pathways do not yet do that well. And it's very easy to tag on college career and civic life without really addressing how civics gets addressed in the high school curriculum. There are places in California now that are doing that quite intensively and explicitly, but that is work that I suspect. I don't know enough about what is currently in place here, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's work that needs to be done.
If anyone can do it, I believe that this team can do it for sure. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the presentation. And thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for your leadership.
Madam President?
Go ahead, Vice President Bozay.
Thank you. In addition to everything that's already been said, I underlined multiple times on many pages project-based learning. And we talked a lot about middle schools and high schools, but I hope that this is carrying over to younger kids as well. That all is part of it. Hands-on, projects, relevancy. The more that we do that with younger students, the more that they're going to be ready for these opportunities when they get to that age. I'm a year away from having a high schooler, but they all love this. They all love doing things with their hands. They're happy to do the math and the calculations, but they want to build the thing. They want to cook the thing. You know, they want to type up the menu and serve the food. They'll do all of it, but that's what gets them really excited, even in the younger kids. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you all very much. Really appreciate your work. Great presentation. And yes, let's move fast and smart. Please. Oh, I was going to tell a story, small story. When I was born and raised Santa Fe and first came back to Santa Fe and found myself in Mary Massey's video production class at Capitol High School. I think that maybe was when I decided to commit myself to the Santa Fe Public Schools in another way, shape, or form. So yeah, there's lots of echoes of the work she's done and all of you have done that goes on and on. Sometimes you don't even know how it's going to impact. Okay, thank you all very much. We'll go ahead and move to our next presentation, a human resources update. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble. Again, thank you, team, for that previous presentation. With us tonight is our Executive Director of Human Resources, Ms. Robin Noble.
Good evening, Board President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. I hope it's okay for me just to take a second to recognize Board Member Gonzalez and Deputy Superintendent Romero for really another outstanding initiative that's obviously going to elevate education for our students. So I'm glad to have been here to hear that. So I'm Robin Noble. I haven't had a chance to speak to the board at this point, but I am the new Executive Director of Human Resources. I do understand that Human Resources, this department, is on your radar, so it's my privilege to serve in this role. I'm going to bring, right off the bat, your attention to commitment to communication on my title page. Throughout the presentation, I want to be talking about communication. I think this is a really important part of the success in our department, and we've already made some steps to improve that and better serve our hiring managers and our clients. So I'm going to refer to this hiring pathway in my presentation, so I wanted to introduce it to you here. This is what a new hire candidate goes through to become an employee of Santa Fe Public Schools. Anytime our principals and hiring managers will give us a recommendation for hire and want that individual to be in their school or department the next day. As you can see, it takes a little bit more effort to make sure that we have quality employees in our classrooms and in our departments. So I'm not going to go through each one of these unless you have any questions, but I just wanted to bring to your attention what the recruiting team and the whole department does to really make it happen. So next is our current data. So we currently have 119 school site vacancies. We have 48 that are on the hiring pathway and will be in schools. And there are currently 71 school site openings. I want to break those down for you. So we have 37 teachers, 23 regular ed, and 14 special education that we need to fill. We have 29 educational assistants. 13 of those are in the regular ed classroom, and 16 are the EVAs that our public forum spoke about. Just 0.6 counselor, 3 secretaries, and 6 librarians are the only vacancies we have in those departments. Just to further qualify the teachers, 19 are secondary, 18 are elementary that we still need to fill. And not big vacancies in typical coursework that we would maybe normally see. And a lot of our vacancies in secondary fall in special education. Transportation 6 are on the hiring pathway, so hoping to get them in buses soon. We still have 4 open positions, but no impact on service. So we'll continue to have the bus routes that we would typically have. And then student nutrition, 11 on our hiring pathway. So we have a bunch of people that are going to be working in our cafeterias and our food service that should be ready by the time students are there. We have 3 open positions, and again, talking to those directors, no anticipation of any lack of service. So responses to our needs, we have sign-on offers that we're advertising right now for our EVAs, collaborating with the Santa Fe Community College, their alternative licensure program, working to expand our advertising campaign for targeted positions. Return to work is those that have retired after a certain period of days. They're able to return up to, I think it's 36 months, so this is a good target for us. And we currently have 144 substitutes who are ready to support our classrooms for the 22-23 school year, and we're hopeful to have somebody in every classroom ready to start school. So this is our department reorganization chart. I'm going to give Howard Exner credit for this. I came into the department and this was kind of set up. You'll see we have the specialist department, generalist department, recruiter, and benefits. I do want to recognize Jeanette Fonseca. She's been in our HR department for 17 years, so she's currently the assistant director, and Krista Valdez, who also has many years in the HR department in the labs, and has been with us, I'm not even sure how long now, I think 4 years. So she's our HR manager and is helping to support that. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what these individual departments do at this point. I'm going to draw your attention to this document, which is in your handout. So again, the focus on communication. So when I came to the department, probably a little bit due to the pandemic, you reached out to the department through a mailbox. And as we know, nobody wants to communicate with a mailbox. So this is a chart that was, I've been with the district for many years. This was here when I was a teacher, I believe, and as a principal. So what this does is this goes out to the whole district so that if you are either a teacher or an employee, principal, hiring manager, you have a person that you're reaching out to and not a mailbox. So we also have a 24-hour turnaround. When we get phone calls, emails, we're trying to do that in 24 hours. It's not always perfect, but that is our goal. And we also communicated that to the whole district. And if you don't get a hold of anybody, the human resource box is strictly so that somebody will reach out to you. So it's kind of a safety net. I monitor that box and will reach out myself if necessary. Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Questions from the board? Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you for the presentation. I know that I spoke with some folks, and it could have been the pandemic, but that it took a longer time than people expected to get hired. So I think that you've speeded up that process.
We've certainly tried. It seems like it's going faster. I do want to mention, put in everybody's mind, and I know Superintendent Chavez is aware of this, getting that hiring process started earlier is critical. One, to recruit people, and secondly, the recruiters right now are just inundated because it started so late in the process. They're doing a fantastic job. Their emails are on that document, our client chart. I mean, a reach out to them, give a shout out would be really appreciated. They've done a great job.
And Ms. Noble, I just want to add that you have new hire orientation on Tuesdays and Thursdays of every week.
Yes.
Thank you. I think I've seen some improvement, so I appreciate that.
Board President Noble.
Go ahead, Secretary Anderson.
I keep thinking you're going to say Secretary Bose, and then I have just a couple of questions. How many folks have you been able to recruit for the Return to Work program?
So the return to work is, it has not been a part of my tenure at this point, so it would be difficult for me to answer that question. I can certainly research it and give you information on that.
Great. I'm just wondering if it's having, I know we were all so excited about it in passing, so I just wondered how much of an impact it would have. So if later there's a,
Yeah, and if I can add a little bit to that, because I did reach out with Krista today. We have about 3 or 4 that participated in that return to work. They sat out the 90 days and they're back with us. I think the big incentive was the increase to the salaries. You know, those base salaries also with you guys. Again, thank you again for approving a minimum of 7% raise for all employees. That also helped. Childcare also helped recruit and retain. So all these little initiatives that we have in place have really helped us with those vacancies. And those vacancies, as you can see, haven't been that low in many years, especially in those core content areas. Special ed has always been a hard area to recruit and fill, but in the past we've had difficulties filling in those core content areas, which in that presentation shows that there's not many vacancies in those areas any longer.
That's great. Just one more question. Thank you, Board President Noble, Superintendent, members of the board. I love that we're having sign-on bonuses or stipends. Sorry, I know I have to use the correct language. But it's really hard, as we heard tonight, for folks, for our EVAs and EAs and our special ed teachers. I mean, it's great that we compensate them. If we, compensating the teachers, I think there's a conversation, to be had about the compensation for EAs. It's just top rate. Like we know that they do far more work than they get paid for. So I wondered, I don't know where this happens in the district, that we work to make those jobs less hard and we don't have the issues that we heard tonight. How are we working to make the job not more rewarding, but just an easier thing to do, like an easier day to come into, and not going home every day thinking, this is incredibly hard, these policies are impacting me. How do we make that happen?
Yeah, good question, Board Secretary Anderson. I think the first way to do that and alleviate some of these added responsibilities is to become fully staffed. Once we are fully staffed, then we don't have to ask staff to take on additional responsibilities. So to me, that's our first goal, is to really get them fully staffed, all sites, all departments, and then continue to work with you and the union on better wages. So I think first step is making sure that we fill all vacancies, and then second step is continue to work on better pay.
Thank you so much.
I completely agree. I'm really hope, and Superintendent, I know you're bored of hearing this from me, but we've got to keep raising the floor of the lowest wages that we pay, which is often EAs, and it's just really important. This may be an impossible question to answer, and I appreciate your hiring pathway graphic. Do we have an average time it takes? Do we know that? And are background checks still an issue in terms of their timing?
They're not as much of an issue this year, and between 2 and 4 days, and a lot of that really just depends on the response of the new hire.
Mm-hmm.
There's many things that they have to turn into us to move forward, so sometimes that has an impact as well.
Thank you. And in terms of our vacancy update, I don't hold in my brain where we've been in previous years, but I wonder about that comparison, and it looks actually not so bad to me. Is that right?
You are correct, Board President Noble. Prior to the pandemic, and then especially during the pandemic or the heightened part of it, we were at 50, 60 teaching vacancies. So we really have lowered it. Last year we were about the same range, but they've done a great job of advertising, getting individuals in. We've had a lot of individuals take advantage of changing the profession. We did advertise and use the stimulus money to help offset that cost. So if there was an individual that had a bachelor's degree and wanted to, or a master's degree, and wanted to change their profession, then we help offset that cost so they can become licensed teachers. You really see on one of them, bilingual positions had always been an issue in the past. We have 2 bilingual positions right now that are vacant, but we also did participate in a program with Santa Fe Community College in New Mexico Highlands, paying for teachers to become bilingual indoors. So again, we're really maximizing and leveraging our federal stimulus to really help the workforce.
Madam President.
Go ahead, Vice President.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent. Just on that point, I want to say thank you for those opportunities for folks who had other careers to enter teaching. I know a handful of people who maybe were subs or volunteers or who worked in private schools or early childhood and are now full-time teachers in the elementary schools. And I think that's been a really wonderful thing. They had a little taste and they really liked it, and they're part of our communities now, and it's wonderful, and it's exciting to see this next generation of folks stepping forward for our students. Thank you.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Just to follow up on that question, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent, I think I've been forgetting to do that tonight. I wanted to ask, are they, now I forgot what I was going to say. Jeez. Sarah? Oh, thank you. So, one of the things, are these people who have bachelor's or master's degrees and wanting to come into teaching, are they then going into the alternative licensure program?
They are, and that's the pathway that we're taking them through, either through Santa Fe Community College or CES, and we are offsetting that cost, different pathways for different individuals, and helping them cover the cost so they can be in the classroom. So that was a big barrier in the past, is they would have to spend their own money to become licensed and certified teachers.
And the Opportunity Scholarship doesn't apply to this? If they already have a degree, that doesn't apply to them?
Well, in the past, prior to the passage of that piece of legislation, last school year is when we started to maximize and leverage those ESSER fundings. So now with this Opportunity Scholarship, it's a great way to leverage both.
Thank you.
And continuing on the alternative licensure, what do we have in place to support people who come through that pathway and maybe don't have any classroom management skills or experience?
So Santa Fe Public Schools does have a teacher mentor program for first-year teachers. Their programs are generally supportive of them as well. I think the fact that our district supports professional learning communities, when teachers walk into a school, they immediately have a team of teachers that are supporting them and helping engage them in the school and the classroom.
the mentorship lasts 1 year with the,
Correct, yes.
okay, can go for 2 years, thank you. Do we need more substitutes?
Well, we have a big crop of them, and some of them are having to renew their licenses, and they're in the process of doing that. But my understanding, comparatively, 144 is a pretty substantial number of substitutes to start the year with, so.
And if I could just add, if you remember last year, we did come to you and you guys did approve raising the rates for substitutes. And when we had that press conference with the governor, one of her suggestions at that time was raising the rates for subs. Little did you know we had already done that, and we're being very proactive. So I think that also helped recruit substitutes for the district.
Thank you. I guess I also want to say that this presentation makes my heart sing, as this superintendent knows and the previous superintendent can attest to. This to me is, it's really the inflection point where change begins. I ran for the Board of Education and wanted to serve here and work with the Santa Fe Public Schools because I believe that talent, the people that you enable, and as they grow and bloom, are everything in a community. And it was, for me, a path through economic development. As we looked at how we develop our economy, it kept coming back to the Santa Fe Public Schools and what our schools do and how important that is. And I guess I feel pretty strongly that human resources and what you do is one of the big determinants of how this district does, because if we get great people working here, great teachers in every classroom, strong EAs supporting them, secretaries who can do what they do, oh my goodness, juggle all of the things that fly at their heads all day long, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, administrators, HR professionals, everyone, you know, it will work if we get the right people here, if we communicate with them well, if we pay them a professional and respectful wage, which we still obviously have some work to do in some areas. But this has been, it's complicated because there are so many requirements and so many things in public education as ever. It's like this system is layers and layers more complex than many others. And what you're doing is wonderful. The numbers look great. There are some good raises in place this year, so please keep going. Let the superintendent please tell us what you need, because this, I really believe, is the area that determines how we do in all other areas. We have a lot of great people, we need to keep them, and when we have vacancies, we need to hire great people to fill them, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Noble. I should say there's no relation. I see the name every so often, and I'm guessing you've experienced what I experienced, which is lots of people want to spell it Nobel over and over again. Okay, moving on to our action items, Roman numeral 8. We will start with the consent agenda, and just, I'm going to do my best to be the board president that maybe I wished I'd had when I first started as a board member, so to say things, but I know, board member Abete, you know how a consent agenda works. I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but just as I believe the city council still does things, if there's anything that you want to pull off and vote on separately, we certainly are at liberty to do so. We have come into a more frequent habit of asking questions sort of in a lump at once. And I would say, you know, pulling something off is if it's more than a brief question, if you want some discussion, some in-depth, or to vote on it individually for another reason. So, that is always an option. We also, once upon a time, had a best practice of not approving minutes for meetings a board member wasn't at. In other words, that we might pull off minutes, for example, number 8, under the consent agenda, vote on that separately, as board member Abeta was not a board member for those 2 meetings. So, and I don't know if anybody else has any feelings, but I guess my sense was that was a pretty good practice, that we vote on minutes separately when a board member wasn't there and would not vote on minutes as approval. Does that make sense? Everybody's nodding, so it seems okay. So I would go ahead and ask that we vote on consent item 8 separately, and so now I would say let's consider consent items 1 through 7. Does anyone want to ask questions and or vote on one of those separately?
Madam President, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
On my contracts over $60,000. On page 1, for the Davenport Construction Management of $500,000, it says provide on-call construction services, including but not limited to renovations of offices and schools, repairing building damage, renovating and repairing bathrooms, replace windows or fix drainage issues. My question is that a fee that covers their repairs, or is that a fee that is for them to be on call for those repairs, which will include additional fees?
Vice President Bose, this is for on-call services, and you'll see the contract listing is substantially large because we entered the fiscal year. So a lot of what you're seeing for facilities and maintenance are those on-call services.
Board President Noble.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Board President Noble. I also have a question on the contracts over $60,000. On page 1, the maintenance service systems, just because it is a $4.2 million contract, I had a question. Is that, are all of our custodial services contracted through this, or do we have district staff who are custodial services and then in addition have these folks as contractors?
Secretary Anderson, yes, that is for both, and that is our contract amount, the contracted amount.
And Secretary Anderson, this was a contract that we approved in the previous fiscal year.
Okay.
It's just that we're opening up that PO now.
Got it. Move approval of consent agenda. Sorry.
No, I'll go ahead and second, and then we'll go for further discussion.
Madam President,
Go ahead.
can I just clarify with you, Mr. Martinez, that then those contracts for on-call services do not provide any additional services other than answering the phone when we call them because there's an emergency?
I'll turn that over to Deputy Superintendent. I believe, from my experience and from what I've seen, it's not. It goes way further than answering the phone. Like on-call construction, having something for them to come if there's an emergency, that they come and do the work at the site. But.
Good evening, Board President, Board members, Superintendent Chavez. On-call construction can look a lot of different ways. Can be in response to an emergency, a programmatic need, a maintenance need. So what we do is we contract folks who've been procured through a procurement process with a capped amount. And so they're called on an as-needed basis to perform services, repairs, small projects, and they'll bill down on that on-call amount with a limit. Okay, so it's as needed and it happens at various schools throughout the fiscal year. And we base these contracts that we're asking for at the beginning of the year on prior year services. So we have a pattern of service that we're trying to attain and be ready to respond to because we need your approval to hire folks so that we do them on an on-call basis with your prior approval. and then they're billed for services rendered. We're billed for services rendered.
That is to a certain extent taken off that contract amount?
We can only be billed to that amount, and we would have to come back to the Board of Education if their work is in excess, if we need more service than what we're contracting them for initially.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ms. Anderson.
And just following up on that, that's very helpful, I appreciate it, but then if, let's say, nothing breaks, I know that won't happen, but, and we spend nothing, we, have that money encumbered for the year, but then we still have it in the account.
President Noble, that is correct. So then we can't be billed and then the money will be disencumbered. This is just a placeholder that we have our procurement in place because when an emergency occurs, not always do we have the time to go through the procurement process, so we have this in place as a placeholder for it. But yes, if it's not entirely used, which we base it off of prior year expenditures, then it goes back into cash.
Great, very much appreciate that. Any other questions on the consent agenda? I also just want to note that on the consent agenda, we have a Davis Scholarship Award and an American Institute of Research Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant. The Davis Scholarship Award is $30,000 and the grant is 6 figures, $135,000, says the superintendent. That sounds about right. There's a picture of a check for that much in our packets, which is kind of fun. We don't often get that. Yeah, $135,000 from the American Institute of Research. So congratulations to everybody involved in that. Okay, we have a motion by Board Secretary Anderson, and I seconded it to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any recusals? Or abstentions, I suppose we say. And I think, okay, we will move on to the minutes, number 8, and I think that, somebody can help me remember, but that would be the thing that Board Member Beta would do, would just abstain from voting.
Yes.
I mean, you don't have to, you can do what you want, but we did consider that a best practice once upon a time. So I will go ahead and move approval of the minutes for the June 16th regular meeting, the June 23rd special meeting, and the July 26th special meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Secretary Anderson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain?
I'll abstain.
Thank you very much. Okay, there we are, looking through the packet. We are on the IDEA, we are on item B on our action items, IDEA Part B, Basic Entitlement and Preschool Entitlement Sub-Grant Authorization. And to Board Member Beta and anybody else, I think there's stuff in our packets, but sometimes the acronyms in education are incredibly daunting, so please ask any questions you want. And Superintendent, do you want to tell us about this item?
Sure. I actually have a guest to do that. I don't think you've met our new Executive Director of Special Education, Mr. Jeff Pinkerton. I think this is his first time in front of the board.
Welcome, Mr. Pinkerton.
Good evening, Madam President.
Oh, you got to press your, there we go.
Good evening, Madam President, Cba School Board, and Superintendent Chavez. It's an honor to be here. As some of you, and it's great to see you and great to be here. As far as the Iep Grant, we have worked very closely with Mr. Martinez and his group. Several of us are new to this process. We've been very much in contact with the state public education department to work on this grant. From 2022 to currently this year, it's reduced by $155,000 for the federal IDEB grant. That's based on a little bit of enrollment decline in the special ed population at that point. So that was for that, which is about 8% or 6% reduction. The basic entitlement went down just a slight amount, $143,000. Everything else, it's very close to what we've been in the past. As far as the NIE enrollment, that was another thing that there was some questions about, and we're up in our NIE enrollment. We have 10 classrooms. As far as special education students, we're up in our numbers. We have 56 students. I understand we have very few openings, and I understand there's more coming. So we're anticipating all of those classrooms to be full. So do you have questions? Or?
Mr. Pinkerton, if I can add, this really does help support our special ed department, our program, and our students. I just want to point out a very specific sentence in there, that funds must not be used to pay for activities for gifted students. Sometimes they get identified as special ed students or within the special ed department, but this is specific for those students who have been identified and gone through the process of being on a IEP, right, individual education plan for those that qualify. The other thing I want to mention, we don't want to over-identify students for special education services. We want to make sure they're appropriate, the service we provide are appropriate. So Mr. Pinkerton and his team did a great job of working with the Public Education Department to really get this application in place to provide those support services as needed. And if you see those staff implications, it really does talk about what they're available to do with this funding.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, go ahead, Vice President Rosé.
Oh, I was just going to move approval.
I'll second. We'll call Dr. Gonzalez the second there. Any further discussion on this? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pinkerton. Okay, we are on item C, our action item for fiscal year 2022-2023 board member committee representatives for audit committee. And this is, given our shifts in the board, and that we appointed Dr. Gonzalez to be our representative to the New Mexico School Boards Association. Her suggestion was that board member Abeta join the audit committee, as she could then serve on the two external boards. She's been on the audit committee for a number of years now. And that seems a sensible thing. So if there are no objections, you seem willing? All right, I'll go ahead and make a motion that board member Abeta join me on the audit committee.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Secretary Anderson, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, thank you very much. We had a meeting today, so you're off the hook for August, and there will be a monthly meeting sometime at noon on a Thursday. It's probably on our forward planning in September. Sure enough, there it is. September 8th and October 13th. Welcome to the audit committee. Okay, moving on to action item D, our fiscal year 2022-2023 board committee appointments for District 4. Board member Abeta, have you by any chance had a chance to identify someone to appoint to the audit committee?
Board President Noble, I haven't, so we can, I'll continue to seek an individual to appoint to the audit committee. Thank you.
And Superintendent, I would just say maybe when board member Abeta is ready, we can just put it on the agenda. We don't need to keep a placeholder on the agenda. We know sometimes, and we appreciate thoughtfulness in audit committee appointments, and it's a hard one. And it would have been an incredibly fast turnaround if you had it. So, and it looks like we're good on the CRC. Okay. Board member Abeta, it sounds like you do have your slots, which can either be reappointments or you could find others. So if you're prepared to do that, that's great. If not, we want you to have time to think about this.
Board President Noble, I would like to reappoint Lisa Randall. However, and after speaking with Member Wheeler, I don't think Philip Montano has attended very many meetings, so I'd like the opportunity to reach out to him, see if he still wants to serve on this committee before we reappoint him.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to move approval of renominating Ms. Randall?
Yes.
I'll
Move
second.
forward.
Any discussion on Lisa Randall continuing on the CRC as the appointment for District 4?
I'm so terrifically happy.
Excellent. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? All right. Thank you very much. And Board Member Beta, again, if you just want to, when you're ready, let the superintendent know and we'll get it on the agenda again.
Thank you. I will.
Okay. Their bells are dinging. It's almost time to go, I suppose. Not quite. Moving on, I think I'm there, right? Yeah. To board discussion and possible action. We have a resolution in our packet on gun violence prevention legislative priorities. I want to thank New Mexicans for the prevention of gun violence for assisting on this resolution. It does look at many of the things that we've talked about recently, unfortunately, in the wake of recent other school shootings. There are so many. And really looking towards, also want to thank Secretary Anderson for her thoughtfulness and a little bit of legwork in talking to legislators to see what might move this year in terms of gun violence prevention. So there is obviously this resolution for our consideration, and just wondering if anybody has thoughts, questions they want to share on this.
Board President Noble.
Go ahead, Secretary Anderson.
Thank you, Board President Noble. I just want to thank you for your leadership in moving this forward. After our school safety meeting, I think we're all left under the impression that our school district is doing absolutely everything that it can to keep our schools safe while not turning them into scary places where our students need to feel fear or feel as though they're in a hostile environment. And the big problem is guns. And we cannot ask our schools to do any more than they are already doing to keep our students safe or to address the greater problems of society. So I think that I really appreciate your work in moving us to take a stand as a board and to take all the action that we can as an elected body.
Also to note that it even quotes Secretary Bozé at some point in the whereases, but now Vice President Bozé has shown a lot of good thinking and leadership around this, including one of the be it resolves that we renew efforts to inform parents about secure storage of firearms in their homes, which was, I believe, brought forward by then Secretary Bozé. I think we were secretary then, or just board member, but secure gun storage and some of the work around secure gun storage, trigger locks, I believe, were included in that. And part of the reason for the timing of this is both to be in time for some work around the legislative priorities ahead of the 60-day session that will begin in January, and to do some communications at the start of the school year regarding safe gun storage and that sort of thing. And the idea is there's been some great thinking, not surprisingly, by our Office of Student Wellness, I think primarily, and always a good team effort in the district, but around a student pledge against gun violence and doing some work with the students, because of course our best way to combat this is to engage students to make sure it doesn't happen in the first place. So that will be coming forward at a more appropriate time once we've had some chance for students to come back in school and do some of the work that they do under the support of the Office of Student Wellness. So if there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and move approval of this 2023 Gun Violence Prevention Legislative Priorities Resolution.
I will second that.
Thank you, Secretary Bozay, or Vice President. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Madam President,
Yes.
thank you. I would just like to say thank you again for everyone that worked on this. It's incredibly important. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks for your thinking on it for a long, long time. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, we've passed a resolution. New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence will be advocating for many of the things contained in this, and again, really appreciate the work in our schools on prevention. For board discussion and possible action, this is also often a place where once upon a time it was put on an agenda as a way for us to act as a unified board in asking the superintendent to do things. Because if we all start running after individual agendas, the superintendent, of course, has the board as the hiring and firing agency that supervises him, no one individual. It is all of us. So one thing I guess I would like to say, and the practice at one point was as long as three of us sort of weigh in and nod, then that becomes something that the superintendent will go away and bring back information on. You know, the superintendent is incredibly responsive, and I think this board has been very well behaved, but it is there to prevent huge research projects assigned by one board member at a time. So one thing I'd like to ask, assuming there are at least two other board members who in agreement, but is just for a little update, we generally by practice don't respond to public forum. Certainly not at that time. I, however, would love to have an update on some of the issues that were raised by Ms. Hanson about the, I'm not going to be able to say what EBHA stands for, but we know there's an educational assistant at the end. Behavioral health is in the middle. I got it. Is that right? Behavioral health is in the middle, EBHA. Does that seem palatable? Okay, everybody's nodding. So we'd love some updates on what that is and pay and if we get raises, all those things, technology, any number of issues. And Ms. Hanson, if you want to email the board or superintendent with some of the concerns, that might create a nice organized list.
Well, thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Another thing, Superintendent, I know that this is on the radar, but student board members, we're hopefully going to get some close to the start of the year at some point.
Absolutely. Mr. Haley's already working on it with the high school principals. When the students are back in session, we'll start getting those student board members to join us.
Board President Noble?
Yes, go ahead, Secretary.
Thank you. On that topic, I would love for us to find a way. I love having the student board members here, participating in the meetings. I would love for us to find a way to utilize student board members to drive the board and to have some youth-led initiatives on the board and to integrate them more fully such that their voices are really centered because they're in the middle of all of this. So I don't know if we should, how we can work through that or at a board meeting or if two of us should work on it or, I mean, it'll of course be once the board members are appointed, but I'd love for us to think about some way that we could become a more youth-centered board.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and let's have it at a minimum as a discussion item, because I think everybody here, all the board members would have things to contribute at that, and maybe plenty of staff members as well. And if it's appropriate, we could even do a brainstorming study session on I think precisely what Secretary Anderson just outlined about how we really work on centering student voices and developing more leadership on the board through those positions.
Madam President?
Yes, go ahead, Vice President.
Are student board members limited to Santa Fe High and Capitol High School only?
And we, I'm sorry, Vice President Bose, we've been talking about that as well. We do have a third seat for another student representative, so we've been talking about expanding that, looking at Desert Sage, ECO, even Mandela, to see if they would want to participate. So that's something Michael Hagley and I have been discussing even at the conclusion of last school year.
Where's President Noble? We could all scoot down if we needed to add more space at the end.
We have loads of microphones, it turns out.
I think I have 3.
President Noble.
Go ahead, Dr. Gonzalez.
Have we decided on a time for a retreat?
Yes, good question, Board Member Gonzalez. We did, don't quote me, I'm almost positive, September 6th in the evening. We're securing a location. We'll get the information out to you guys. As I reached out to you, you guys did indicate that you prefer something earlier in the week and maybe in the evening, so we did find that date open. I don't want to give you the wrong information about the location, so I'll get that back out to you.
And just to note, that is the Tuesday after Labor Day. So, might be a little bit of a slow reentry. But is that amenable to members of the board? Okay. All right, anything else we should be thinking about for board discussion and possible action at this stage? And again, this is, there's many doors to board discussion and possible action. One is to bring it up here, that's one way if it's on your mind at the end of the board meeting, but also just to email me or the superintendent, and our practice is anything anybody wants, any board member wants on this section can go on the agenda. Yes, Board Member Beta.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to share my experience with some of the staff members coming onto the board. Alma, Teresa with IT, and Sabra, they were just so friendly, and I was really impressed with the way I was treated and welcomed to the district, and so I just wanted to be sure to acknowledge that. I'm very impressed, so thank you. Please pass my thanks on to them and the appropriate individuals that supervise them. I was really impressed. Thank you.
Great team. It's a great team.
Madam President?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I probably should have said this earlier during board announcement and follow-up and after the swearing in, but I wanted to welcome Mr. Avita to the board. I didn't make a lot of public comments at our last meeting. It was a little bit, it's a little bit awkward and uncomfortable to appoint someone to a position that would otherwise be an elected position. I think we did a very good job. I appreciate all of the community members that shared their endorsements as it was, and I look forward to working with you. It's a great team.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, moving on to advanced planning. We have our schedule there. Anything you want to update us on, Superintendent, or change?
No, I think the only thing I want to make note of is we already removed because we are not going to have that study session. It is the second day of school for students, so initially we had discussed, and you guys did decide at the previous board meeting not to have that study session because it is the second day of students, so everything else holds.
I think that's wise. So we do not any longer have a meeting next week on the 18th.
Correct.
It's not even listed on advanced planning, but it was on our last thing. And on the 25th, there's a tentative executive session. Superintendent will let us know whether that's needed, and then a regular meeting. And then on into September. And it looks like actually there's the meeting on the 25th, and then very likely a board retreat on September 6th. That's not listed on advanced planning. But otherwise, the schedule holds for now. Okay, anything further tonight? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.